If you've seen even a handful of anime in your life, you probably know about the medium's complete hatred for depicting older characters. Whether it be the slice-of-life romance show that chooses to exclusively focus on high schoolers and no one else, or the fantasy shonen series where a 15-year-old is inexplicably given the power to save the world, anime hates people over the age of like 20. And it's not like I don't understand why. Anyone who's currently in the boundary between teenagedom and adulthood knows what an absurd experience it truly is. It's a merging of childlike joy and whimsy with the presumed cynicism and monotony of full-blown adulthood. And the journey of many people's early 20s is to find a middle ground between these two extremes. And that's hard. It's so much easier to center your show around a bunch of dumb teenagers than to even try and capture a sliver of what young adulthood is actually like. Well, as it turns out, not every anime property is shied away from that challenge. In fact, a specific duology went so far as to tackle it head-on, attempting to capture that feeling of turmoil and discord in two distinct but related anime properties. The more cynical and self-important half comes in the Tatami galaxy, while the lighthearted and joyous one is embodied in The Night is Short, Walk On Girl. This set of anime were both originally novels written by Tomohiko Morimi, and both were adapted by the immensely talented Masaki Yuasa, one into an 11-episode anime and the other into a full-length movie. In order to analyze what these works mean together, we first have to figure out what they mean on their own. So let's start with the Tatami Galaxy and see what it's all about. As I said before, the Tatami Galaxy is meant to represent the more cynical and adult-like half of the young adult experience. And that intention is pretty obvious as soon as the show starts. The main character is a fast-talking third-year college student who rarely smiles or feels like there's anything worth smiling about. In most of its episodes, our protagonist Watashi is an outsider in whatever club or organization he's chosen to be a part of, occasionally even taking an openly antagonistic stance towards them. And throughout it all, his only real friend is a little gremlin called Ozu, a slimy character who, despite being good friends with Watashi, screws our hero over on quite a few occasions. Throughout all of this nonsense that's happening around him, Watashi is basically a perpetual straight man. He's snarky and sarcastic and reacts in some really funny and interesting ways to the antics of the world around him. His narrations are one of my favorite parts of the show, as we basically get front row seats to Watashi's nihilistic internal dialogue. But despite all of that, Watashi has the spirit of an idealist. He has grandiose dreams of his rose-colored campus life, a college existence that will lead him to friends, fame, and a beautiful raven-haired girl at his side. He does almost everything he can throughout the story in an effort to attain this ideal, and his nihilism is usually a result of the gap between the reality of the world and his expectations. College is built up to many as this place where dreams become reality, where you can escape the mundanity of who you were before and reinvent yourself. And while it definitely has that capacity, it's not a universal experience. Watashi goes into college with this expectation of becoming popular and finding love with the girl of his dreams. But we see throughout the show that Watashi is constantly unable to carve out the life he wants, no matter what choices he makes. Because of his constant failure at reaching his goals, Watashi eventually becomes hopeless and depressed, refusing to leave his room and engage with others, falling into the dull monotony of going to class and coming straight back home the first chance he gets. To Watashi in this moment, his room has become his everything, the place he eats, sleeps, studies, and lives. And so, in a stroke of karmic justice, Watashi becomes literally trapped in this small room of his, unable to escape from the infinite sea of tatami rooms. He spends months in this galaxy of his own, each one meant to embody a different life that Watashi could have lived. Lives in which he joined clubs, went outside, and met people. Through being deprived of his ability to go outside and getting forced to see the possible lives he could have been living, Watashi comes to a realization. The ideal college life he wanted was there all along. Watashi finds an appreciation for the people that were around him through all of these choices, all the people he took for granted because they didn't line up with his rose-colored campus life. He longs for the mundane and occasionally infuriating experiences he had in other lives, where he stepped out of his room and chose to try. That's the biggest lesson that Watashi learns in the show, to grasp the opportunity that's been in front of him the entire time, and recognize that even if it's not ideal, even if it's not perfect in some picturesque way, he will be better off for trying, and for putting in that effort, it will be perfect for him. Watashi's story, on a certain level, is a journey from the depths of nihilism and cynicism to the wonders of optimism. Despite having wholehearted dreams of his college life, Watashi seemed to adopt a very toxic perspective because of them. He grew unable to appreciate the few things he had, constantly comparing them to the world that existed in his head. He wasn't wrong for having those dreams and wanting them more than anything, but his single-minded pursuit of them without appreciation for the journey robbed him of what he could have had. This type of journey should be very relatable to anyone going through this stage of life. The overwhelming amount of opportunities offered by college and young adult life in general can almost become too much. There are so many paths laid out before you, all of which seem like they could lead to the life you want. Friends, popularity, love, so many abstract goals flow just out of reach, almost taunting you. It's so easy to be consumed by all of those expectations, to feel the pressure of being so close to the life you dreamed of, and to let that lead you to the type of cynicism that Watashi displays. Or even worse, to get overwhelmed and burnt out and stop trying at all, shutting yourself in your room and refusing to even dream anymore. But through Watashi's story, we get to see the value of appreciation, not to be confused with complacency or contentment. Watashi is able to find his own rose-colored campus life by learning to appreciate the people that have existed by his side the entire time. He hasn't changed his goalposts, but he's found joy in the process of chasing them down. And eventually it leads him to the raven-haired maiden of his dreams, a person that's been by his side through every life he's lived, who he finally finds the courage to confess his feelings to. There's still some stuff left to say about the message at the core of the Tatami galaxy, but I think I'll save that for later. Hopefully I gave you a good enough idea about what the show is about so that the moral will sit in the back of your mind when we talk about The Night is Short, Walk On Girl. It's really almost incredible how quickly The Night is Short sets itself apart from the Tatami galaxy. Whereas the latter seems laser-focused on telling one story and getting it across as fast and efficiently as possible, The Night is Short starts out almost lazily. It meanders through an opening where we get introduced to most of the key players of the story. And through it all, there's never really any hook or central plot to attach ourselves to. We get a small bit of motivation through the senpai, who decides that tonight will be the night he finally confesses. But aside from that, this world seems content in taking its sweet time. The Night is Short thrives on this hazy sense of purpose. Contrary to the title, the story allots infinite time for its characters to go where they please and do what they want. One of the central absurdist story beats of the movie is that this night we observe seems to last for a literal eternity. The one motivating purpose, the single driving force between the entirety of the story, is the idea of fun. Our protagonist, who like many others in the story is only referred to by her title, seeks to wander around the city of Kyoto and explore every aspect of the nightlife that she can, thus living the night to its fullest. She makes her way through the city, running into a great number of colorful characters and having some truly absurd experiences. But through it all, she tackles the world head-on and attempts to push through. I can't emphasize how much this movie really wouldn't work without her. Otome is a spotlight amidst the bright vista of Kyoto's nightlife, and her journey through the city illuminates the stories that take place around her, bringing focus and clarity to a saga that could otherwise become overwhelming. Having a character like Otome anchors us throughout the rollercoaster ride of this story. Each of the different mini-adventures she goes on seems to embody a different facet of the young adult experience. However, differently from the topics handled in the Tatami galaxy, these facets all stem from the more quote-unquote fun side of things. She goes on a drinking spree at the start of the night, eventually having a massive showdown with an old man for the right to drink the legendary imitation Denki Bran. After that, she wanders through a used book fair, searching for a specific book from her childhood and having a chance run-in with the local god of knowledge. Finally, she takes part in a run-and-gun theater production as the lead, a parody musical made by the completely insane character known only as Dawn Underwear. These plot points may sound completely disjointed and crazy, and to a certain extent they are, but ultimately all of these short stories follow the same overall arc, an arc that reflects the overall message that this movie is trying to tell. Alcohol is one of the categorical markers of young adult life. Whether it be bars, mixers, or drinking with your friends at home, it's an act that symbolizes the start of your adulthood, a time that should be filled with fun and merriment. And The Night is Short seems to condone this, with our main character Otome tossing back drinks like crazy. But within this story, there also exists a cautionary tale. When Otome finally has her drinking showdown with Rihaku, we see that the old man clearly has a drinking problem. He partakes in alcohol not out of fun and exploration like Otome does, but out of a deep sadness and loneliness. In their drinking battle, this is ultimately what allows Otome to win. The movie literally shows us that Otome is bolstered by the joy of life and her desire to have fun, while Rihaku is dragged down and crushed under the weight of his own misery. Drinking alcohol is something that can make a good night even better. It's always fun to have a fun drink or two with some friends. But in excess and for the wrong reasons, it can bury you under the weight of your own sorrows. Otome is able to get the most out of it, but that does not mean that it is universally good, as we see the negative effects drinking has on Rihaku. So even while the story seems to condone this type of reckless drinking, it in fact takes a stance of moderation, attempting to show both the good and the bad of this aspect of young adult life. The next leg of Otome's journey brings her to the used book fair of Kyoto. Used book fairs should be a place where knowledge is freely shared and exchanged, where people can expand their worldviews and broaden their horizons through the acquisition of new books. However, we learn from the god of the used book fair that this isn't currently the case. People at the book fair frequently overcharge others for the books they sell, and occasionally even hoard them, forming a collection that will never be shared or dispersed. Otome is offended by this idea and eventually sets out to free the books from their tightly bound prisons. Attaining more knowledge is of course a staple marker of your early 20s. Whether it be through college, grad school, or just practical life experience, young adulthood is a time to broaden your horizons and grow yourself as a person. We're lucky in this day and age for knowledge to be so easily accessible. Textbooks and reference materials can be found online more often than not, and secondhand bookstores make it easy for anyone to have access to learning. But that's still not always the case. There will always be people who seek to stockpile knowledge, to store it away and charge money for others to access it. And while this can fall under the umbrella of attaining more knowledge, this treatment of information is wrong. Knowledge has the most value when it is shared equally, not when it is kept for a single person or group of people. Otome makes sure that this injustice is corrected in the story by helping the god of the used book fair free the books kept by the collector. This moral, while in a slightly different font than the last one, also seeks to say the same thing. Even though aspects of young adult life can seem fun and harmless, like drinking or amassing knowledge, they must be done with consideration and the right intentions. Without a correct goal in mind, you'll end up just like Rihaku, a bitter old man who drowns himself in alcohol and sits atop a pile of books, not knowing why he continues to indulge in either. The last story beat was the hardest for me to unpack, mostly because the movie doesn't try to paint these actions in a negative light. But from what I can tell, it seems like The Night is Short Walk-On Girl attempts to construct a critique out of sheer absurdity, and I think you'll see what I mean. Otome joins in on a traveling theater show written by the character Don Underpants. This show engages in open guerrilla tactics, attempting to evade the festival authorities and continue to broadcast their play in parts to the masses. Don Underpants himself is a character that seeks to do everything he can to attain his one true goal of love. After seeing a girl and falling for her on the spot when an apple falls on his head, he insists on refusing to change his underpants until he can find her and confess. He constructs this whole elaborate stage play in order to make his feelings known and finally find the girl he loves. All of that sounds fine. It's a wholesome, if a bit extreme, love story that ultimately doesn't seem all that weird in this absurd world. Well, that is until its climax, where it is revealed that the girl Don fell in love with was actually one of his best friends. And not only that, this person is also the leader of the festival authorities that has been one of Don's greatest adversaries up until this point. Now, if they had just gotten together in this moment, honestly I would have cheered, because we love getting some queer rap in anime. But they make it clear in the movie that despite Don being super down with this idea, the festival leader is really not interested. In this moment, the person who's been directing the play speaks up and confesses that she actually has feelings for Don. It's made clear through song that she's a better fit for Don than the festival leader ever could be. But despite this, Don insists that he's in love with the festival leader and refuses to change his mind. That is, until a carp falls from the sky and lands on both of their heads. At which point, Don changes his mind and falls in love with the director, and the two of them start dating. So yeah, this arc is a roller coaster ride from top to bottom. I'd very much recommend watching it if you're even a little bit interested, because it is genuinely a full in-universe musical, which is just so creative. But anyways, I think that the downright absurdity of this arc is part of the point. The journey that Don Underpants goes on is meant to act as a critique for the type of single-minded love he experiences, the type that consumes his life for so long. His initial act of falling in love when an apple drops on his head is meant as a stand-in for the idea of love at first sight, the concept that you can see someone and immediately know that they're the one for you. Throughout the story, Don's commitment to his love blinds him to the world outside of that. He refuses to take care of himself and wears the same pair of underwear for months. And even when he learns that the director has feelings for him, he stays true to his first love, even though the director is clearly a better match for him. The type of headstrong love that Don exhibits is another very common experience early on in your life. Seeing someone and getting single-mindedly obsessed with them for some reason that may not make sense to anyone other than you. And while this type of obsession is often glorified by media, in The Night is Short we see how truly absurd this type of love can be. The apple that falls on his head could have led him to a relationship that he truly may not have wanted, and it could have made him turn away a person that would have been perfect for him. The pursuit of love is a beautiful thing, but in its excess it can become a damaging obsession. And this lines up with the other morals this movie seems to want to convey. In totality, The Night is Short Walk-On Girl is a story about excess, and the damage that can come from leaning too far into any of these stereotypically fun markers of young adulthood. Drinking too much without restraint and the proper goal in mind will start to magnify your sadness rather than your joy. And collecting too much knowledge without sharing it will make you selfish and deprive others of the same joy you found. And falling too deep in love without keeping an open mind and an open heart can lead you to situations that truly don't make you happy. And I'm sure you may be thinking, doesn't the narrative kind of fall apart with Otome at its center? Her whole deal is that she only cares about fun and making the most of life, which in itself is an extreme. Well, her lesson comes at the very end of the story, and really drives home the moral of the entire movie. Throughout The Night is Short, Senpai is seen repeatedly attempting to confess his feelings for Otome, but through it all she remains blissfully unaware of his attempts. However, in the musical arc, Senpai crashes the play and confesses his feelings for her atop the stage, finally letting her know how he really feels about her. By this point in the story, almost the entire cast of the show are sick and in bed. The sickness is likely entirely metaphorical and represents each character getting slowly overcome by their sadness and loneliness. Senpai in particular feels so intensely alone that his emotional turmoil creates an actual storm that manifests in the city. But through all of this mayhem, Otome is able to remain standing. She's the only one that's able to remain on her feet and keep pushing forward the entire night. However, after realizing Senpai's feelings for her and starting to uncover her own feelings for him, she decides to try and help him. She forges her way through the storm of Senpai's despair and is eventually able to cure him of his sickness. And finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the sun rises and the night comes to an end. In this moment, Senpai is finally able to confess his feelings to her and ask her out, which she accepts. Throughout the entire movie, Otome has only been focused on one thing. She wants to have fun, to keep moving forward and chart her own path. And this path ultimately makes it hard for her to recognize the fact that Senpai has feelings for her. She's so focused on pushing through and forging ahead that she leaves people in the dust, always focused on the road ahead and untouched by the troubles that seem to mire the rest of the cast. But eventually, she has to come to terms with how she really feels about the people around her. Her feelings towards Senpai, who she finally truly sees. In the end, she chooses to chart a course not forward, but towards another person. She finds a way to meet Senpai with his feelings and keep pace with them, and it lets her find a relationship that may have never come true if she continued the way she was going. Ultimately, that's the resolution we find in the movie. We learn that despite how it seemed, the title actually did hold true. It may have felt like the night went on forever, like Otome had all the time in the world to have fun and live her life to the fullest. But every night has to come to an end. And to make the most of it, you need to be aware of the things that truly matter, the people around you and the way you feel about them. And sometimes, to live your life to the fullest, you'll have to learn to walk side by side with them. This moral echoes the one that came before it, condemning excess and overindulgence. Whether you want to drink, to learn, or to find love, there will always be harm without consideration. Despite how freeing it is to finally be an adult, to have the opportunity to forge your own path in life and push yourself forwards, that shouldn't stop you from doing it thoughtfully and keeping in mind the world outside yourself. The night is short. We don't have all the time in the world, so temper yourself and find a path that allows you to have fun while still considering the things that truly matter. Hopefully things are starting to become clear about these two series and the way they relate to each other. When considering the overall moral of these works, I like to imagine a large sliding scale that encompasses the breadth and complexity of young adult life. On one side, you have the intense cynicism and goal-oriented fervor that is embodied by Watashi in the Tatami Galaxy, and on the other, you have the free-spirited whimsy of Otome in The Night is Short, Walk-On Girl. Both of these paths are represented as absolutes, with Watashi being the ultimate nihilistic college student and Otome being extremely carefree and eccentric. Through both of their stories, these anime slowly start to pick apart the issues with the type of extremes shown in their work. The Tatami Galaxy shows how Watashi's goal of a rose-colored campus life ultimately blinds him to the joy that exists directly around him. And similarly, Otome is shown to be so caught up in her journey of exploration and fun that she never considers the goal of getting into a relationship with someone until it's almost too late. She continues at her own pace even when others start to fall behind. Both of these anime seem to tell two halves of the same story, not in their plot but in their message. When considered together, it's clear that the writer and director seek to impart a story of moderation. Being overly cynical and focused on this ideal unattainable goal is sure to lead you to disappointment. But at the same time, being too focused on the fun of the moment and setting your own pace may blind you to the goals of people around you. And so the true answer lies somewhere in the middle, finding ways to work towards your goals with joy, while still remaining conscious and aware of the world around you. In the end, these two series try to bring together the two contrary halves of young adult life. They try to confront the issues with extremity in either direction and champion a more well-rounded person. And that's why these two anime together prove to be my favorite depiction of adulthood in the entire medium. This was supposed to be a 10-minute video on the way these two animes interact with each other and seem to overlap in theme, but apparently I had different ideas when writing the script. What was originally a 1-page document of notes on the two series quickly became an 8-page Google Doc, because of course it did. And even more unfortunately, I don't think there's a single part of this I can cut without the overall message just completely crumbling. So, good luck to the me that has to edit this. Despite the length, I hope you guys enjoyed. I keep forgetting to do this, but if you like what you saw, please consider subscribing. I love making videos, but the algorithm has been very mean to me recently after one of my videos went viral, so any and all support is super appreciated. Thank you so much for watching.